for our fantastic panel. So water, water, nowhere. Not a drop to spare, I think is the title of our panel. Whoever dreamt this title up is a genius, because of course we all know where it comes from. So I'd just like to invite our fabulous panelists to come up and take a seat. So take a seat wherever you would like. But whilst you're doing that, so if you're standing at the back and you're thinking, do I stick around for this session or do I go off and get myself a drink? I'd encourage you to stay, because amongst the panelists, we've decided that we're going to have a bit of fun. And also, if there are any nasty questions, I think they've said they're going to ask the audience. Is that right? Excellent. But just before we start, what I'd like us to do, because I know that we've got a fabulously international audience here with us today. Now, personally, I grew up in the northeast of Scotland, so the northern part of the United Kingdom, where I think we might say that we have a little bit too much water, okay? Whereas, of course, we're here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where it might be a little bit drier. So I don't know, looking at the panel, depending on where you're from, if thumbs up was we've almost got too much water, thumbs down was we have to look after every single drop. Where do you guys sit? Where are you from? Thumbs up is I've got lots of water at home. Thumbs down is I don't have very much water. Okay, Hashim's gone, I don't have anything. Dennis? He's not breaking with the system. Somewhere in the middle. Oh, he's going to tell us later. Bit yes, bit no. Oh, there we go. Dusan? Somewhere in the middle. How about the audience? Thumbs up, thumbs down, where are you? Okay, we've got some people from wet countries, some people from dry countries, some people somewhere in the middle. Fabulous. But this is great, because when we talk about water, it is important for every single one of us on this planet. And for some of us, it's really annoying because we're worried about flooding. For some of the rest of us, we're worried about drought. Within mining, it's not just about having too much or having too little, it's also about the quality of that water. So we really, really need to look after it. So I think the panel is now settled, which is fantastic. What I'm going to invite our panelists to do is, actually I'm going to start with Dusan at the far end. If you want to say, what's your name?
Check.
Testing, testing.
Check.
Excellent. And now sing a song? No. If you want to say your name, your title, and where you work, and then we'll pass the microphone along the table.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dusan Ilic. I'm from the Centre of Bulk Solids and Particulate Technologies, based at the Newcastle Institute for Energy and Resources, which is an institute at the University of Newcastle in Australia.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dusan.
Hello, my name is Ingrid Putkonen. I'm originally from Mexico, but I live in Vancouver, and I founded an organization called Metals for Humanity.
Fantastic, Ingrid.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Gibson, originally South African, carrying an Australian passport with a US green card, living in Montana. So it's a bit of that's why I'm not quite sure what side of the coin I am. I work for a company called Snowline Group. We're strategic business management consultants. The reason I'm here is I used to look after water for Rio Tinto for a good number of years. So that's the reason I'm on this panel.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dennis. And Hashim.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Hashim Al-Hawsawi from Saudi Geological Survey. I'm a hydrologist. I've been working for Saudi Geological Survey for a bit long time. And I've been working in different projects, such groundwater rising and flood hazard. Yeah.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you very much, Hashim. And thank you. A round of applause, please, for our fabulous panelists. See, there we go. So if everybody's left by the end, we've still had our round of applause. It's great. So Dennis, not only have you lived and worked all over the world, but you've got huge experience when it comes to water. Could you please give us a brief synopsis with regards to why we should care?
This is an interesting thing. When you've been in water, so to speak, for about 40 years, it's hard to distill it down to a 2-minute summary. And I started writing notes, and I ended up with half a book full of these things. And then I was asked about what really is the importance? Why is water critical to us? And we've heard a few things here at this conference already. It's been called water is the new oil, which was a phrase used a number of years ago. Yesterday I heard that copper is the new oil, which was an interesting one. And then I thought about, without water, we actually have nothing. We don't have mines, we don't have life, we don't have anything at all. So the bottom line is water is critical, it's foundational to every single thing that we deal with. And you mentioned about two challenges. What are the two challenges that we actually face in the mining sector? And I'll focus in on the mining sector. I guess I'll talk about, first of all, an internal challenge. And that is really about being proactive in water management rather than reactive. Miners are great at solving problems. You give them a water shortage, they will solve it. You give them water excess, they will solve that problem. But one of the biggest challenges I've found is actually educating and helping folk understand how to be proactive in water management. When you've got too much of it, look after it and ensure that you're not taking advantage, because the cycle will switch. If you've got too little, it's actually it's easy to find that water is valued. But that's one of the big challenges. So internal is turn reactive into proactive. An external challenge is really competition. Competition for water. And this will probably help a number of the other panelists in terms of the direction to go in. The big one is communities. Right now, mining and communities can be a great conflict over water, and that has stopped many an operation. So we have to actually address water in the communities. The other one is water in the environment. There are examples, for example, Escondida in Chile. They are no longer permitted to actually abstract water from the salars. So what did they have to do? They had to go and build a desalination plant. And there's massive implications of that. So the environmental challenges, the community challenges, and then, in fact, the third relates to just competition between industries. So where's that water going to be most valued and deliver the greatest value to in fact, community, to the world as we are. So anyway, I could get going for a long time, so I'm going to pass this on to whoever you choose next.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dennis. And I know how much, well, I have an inkling of how much knowledge is in there. But Hashim, I wanted to come to yourself next. So Dennis has talked about both those internal challenges, so or kind of, I guess, opportunities, how do we get proactive with regards to managing our water? And then those external pressures, so be it with regards to communities, the environment, and then other industries that want to use it. Do you see the same kind of challenges here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
Yes, of course. Our region here in the country where this, like Saudi Arabia is located, one of our duties at Saudi Geological Survey actually is to preserve our resources, our water resources from depletion, especially when it's come to mining, and because there is a lot of demand on groundwater in agriculture and mining as well. We have to look very carefully in these figures of water. Therefore, one of our duties is to know how we can use this water wisely. And the issue we are facing actually beside of the scarce of water in the country, it's how we can manage it. Thanks of God, we have a lot of raining water, which is in the southern part of the country, but how to use it in this industry, it's the most important thing. You know, we have this Arabian Shield, which is in the western part of the country, which has a lot of mining industries in the country, and to bring water from far distance, it's a big challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, so that transportation of water is so difficult. Now, Dusan, I know that we're going to come on to the technology side in a second, but first, on the way there, I was going to come to Ingrid and say, so Dennis and Hashim, so they've spoken about some of those challenges with regards to water, and one of the aspects that both mentioned was people and communities. Do you have anything you want to build on with regards to that?
Well, first I want to start with a poem that I came across in the words of this British poem, W.H. Auden. He's got this beautiful line where he says, "Thousands of people have lived without love, but not one has lived without water."
Brilliant.
So when you hear these predictions about how many of the battles that we'll face in the future, a little bit going back to what you were saying earlier, Dennis, you can understand why some people are thinking, well, some of the future battles are going to be around water. They may be around love as well, but that's another conversation. I'm not going to go into that one now. But yes, so in our organization, we work with different NGOs introducing various new technologies. And in our case, actually, we are using silver to disinfect the water. So we have a spearheading leader of one of our initiatives, and this leader happens to be the world's largest silver mining company. It's a Mexican company, it's called Fresnillo. And so basically we go into communities, mining communities and non-mining communities, and we introduce these systems that use silver to disinfect the water. So it's great in order to raise awareness about the value and the benefits of silver. So that's one aspect. But the other aspect is how we involve local community members exactly in this point of, you know, how they become stewards. Because when you come in to introduce these programs, you come in at the beginning, and that's great. You can come back and check in. But it's the people that are there that have to maintain them. If you're partnering with a mining company to do these programs, as we are, mining companies are actually great development partners. I know that this was a topic earlier today. They're there, I mean, they're great partners because they're in these remote parts of the world, and they're there for decades, unlike local governments. So they really work very well. But at the end of the day, you do want the community to have those abilities to lead these programs. So it is that, that's one of the challenges. I mean, it's one of the opportunities, but it's one of the challenges.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much for that, Ingrid. And we've got even more poetry coming in, not just Coleridge's water, water everywhere. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Dusan, how about yourself? So if we think, okay, so we need to look after this water. How can we make sure we either don't need to use as much in, say, our processing or all of the other aspects where we can deploy technology? Any suggestions?
Yeah, so I think one thing that is kind of constant in this discussion is getting a balance of you know, the ecosystem, if you like. But here we're talking about water, so balance in the use of water, and that's really also very, very important in the handling of minerals and ores all the way through the supply chain, from the ore body to the process plant to the port, etc. So understanding the relationship between the water that is present in that ore or mineral as it moves along the supply chain is critical to maintaining the operation to keep going, and you know, to reduce downtime and problems that may be occurring on site that might increase your operational cost of the facility. But also, you know, there is an influence there on the secondary streams that are coming once you process the ore. So, you know, we're talking about the brine from the salt. We're talking about some kind of gangue that requires attention, and So if we consider then the development of new and disruptive technologies or different technologies for processing that are less water consuming, which influences the balance, I think it's also important to consider how that may affect the operation and what you then do in order to optimize the supply chain for that mineral or resource.
Great, thank you, Dusan. And I think we'll come back to you in a second. But first, Dennis, from your experience, where have you seen the biggest advances being made with regards to water management within the mining sector over your career?
Well, it's interesting when I think about how water management has changed over the last number of years. A lot of it has not changed as much as
Yeah. Oh. Do you want to pass that microphone over? Thanks.
I actually attend a number of conferences, and I find that what we were talking about 20 years ago, we're still talking about today. And some of the basics, for example, measurement. Technology has improved in terms of measurement, but we need to, if we're going to manage something, we need to measure it. And that's the standard saying. So no matter how basic that is, I actually think that we need to really focus in on simple things like water balances and measurement. The other area that I was actually really interested in, that was mentioned by Robert Friedland, if I just say Robert, probably everyone knows who I'm talking about, is the Ivanhoe typhoon. And the fact that they're not only going to use the geophysics to be able to identify ore bodies, but also to map water. And that to me is actually really exciting because, you know, when we know where water is, how much water is there, then we realize how much of a challenge that we have, if I focus particularly on Saudi, because of the very limited aspects. So technologies in terms of identification and tapping into that water. The third aspect is really about what are the technologies, and there are technologies that are there to extract value from streams that are contaminated, that may become a real issue to the environment, to communities and so forth. And there are technologies out there to tap out the metals, you know, the critical metals that we're actually looking at and searching for. We can actually tap into those from some of our waste streams. So there's companies around the world, and I actually work with one of them based in Australia, that is actually tackling the ability to treat water and yet recover valuable materials and minerals. And I think that's been a fair advance. And I could go on. There are a lot of other opportunities out there, and there's some folk in this audience that have technologies that are very applicable to us using water more wisely. And maybe we'll come back to that a little later. But
yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Dennis, with regards to that. And Dusan, maybe coming back to yourself again, what's one of your favourite technologies that you've seen recently that's had a massive impact or has the potential to have a really big impact?
Oh, look, I don't think I could say one. I could name a number of them. I think what is really exciting, at least in Australia and in a number of countries in the world, but my perspective is Australia, is the applied research and the collaboration between tertiary institutions and industry to global sustainable issues that, you know, everyone is facing. So, you know, this kind of innovation that is being born out of you know, very kind of positive ideas of doing things together. We're talking about gender equity, we're talking about multicultural people coming together, as well as, you know, kind of having a opportunity for sharing in the prosperity of you know, increase in the resources. So I think that was one thing that kind of spoke to me a bit earlier from the first presentation this morning, is the role of mining in the development, as a development partner in shared prosperity. So I think this is something that maybe Ingrid might want to have a chat about, you know.
Yeah, so Ingrid, your ears are burning. Is there anything you would like to leap on there?
Well, yes. I mean, this idea of shared prosperity is obviously crucial, is what we're getting at with the SDGs. And so, for example, in our organization, it's as much as about at the level of collaboration and implementation. That's why we look to coordinating with the mining industry, with other private sector partners, government, NGOs, local communities, and so on. And that's in the process of actually bringing about the projects. And then, of course, the idea is that in the result, that will be shared. But it's important to remember that it's the whole process.
Yeah.
So you want to involve the beneficiaries from the very beginning, and you want them sitting at the table as one of the members with whom you're going to be making these decisions, because then it's going to be more successful.
Yeah.
And prosperity is not just, again, at the end. It's also having that opportunity at the very beginning for all the participants to put forward what they think is the way to go forward, because right there you're building capacity. Right there you're giving voice. Well, you're making, I mean, they have voice, but you're giving them the opportunity to express it. So, you know, it's that whole range.
And so just sticking with yourself, Ingrid, so I used to work for one of the other large mining companies of the world, Anglo American, and they are in the process of commissioning a large copper project in the south of Peru called Quellaveco. And one of the main challenges there, of course, was water, because there's not a whole load of water in the south of Peru. And what the company did was they said, okay, well, we need to work with all of these different stakeholders. And instead of putting mining in the middle of that table for the subject of debate, actually the really big issue in that area was water. And so water was the topic of discussion. And not only through those dialogue tables did they come to a collective set of ideas and agreements as to, okay, how can we better manage water in this region? But it was through the discussion about water that Anglo American built the relationship and the trust and the respect with all of those different parties. Ingrid, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that. And then Dennis, I'm sure you've got an opinion on this. And Hashim also will have something as well.
So we have one, there's a couple of different methods that we've employed in our implementation. And one of them is called Cameras for Change. And basically what we've done there is we've paired engineers from the mine with local people, ideally school teachers and indigenous leaders and other leaders from the community. And it's really interesting what happens. So rather than having them sit across the table to discuss these issues, which can be very confrontational, we gave them cameras. And so we gave them cameras, and for a week, the mining engineer and the school teacher spent that, not the whole week, but you know, different periods during the week, and they walked around the community, each with their own camera, and they walked around together, taking photographs of anything that related to water. And of course, the engineer would take the school teacher into the mine. The school teacher had never actually been inside the mine, but then there he was, and you know, he was learning about whatever the engineer wanted to show him. And then in the reverse, the school teacher took the engineer to certain mountainsides and showed how the water had dried up, or you know, what the issue was, which the engineer didn't even know. So what was fascinating is, rather than having these two individuals sitting across the table in a confrontational way, they spent the week walking together, shoulder to shoulder, in an experiential way. And literally, this was amazing. At the end of the week, they each looked at the world through the lens of another.
Fantastic.
And that's a very powerful, because often we make these projects about talking. And I mean, maybe most people will know, but isn't it said that 70% of communication is nonverbal?
Yeah.
So think of how we're communicating right now as we sit here, right? Our body language, our tone. So there's so much that happens in so many other ways, and you know, I don't think we use that enough.
No, absolutely brilliant. That's a really great example. Dennis, do you have anything to build on that? And then Hashim will come to you.
My mind is going in so many directions right now. It's which operation do I choose it as an example? I'll choose from one from Perth, or from the Pilbara in Western Australia. I think there are a few Aussies around here. That's the Rio Iron Ore operation actually had mined most of the resources that were above water table. So what was left? The below water table operations. So despite the fact that they were in an arid area, they were actually having to access ore bodies below water table. And that required dewatering of a significant volume of water. Well, guess what? We ended up with massive issues with the traditional owners because there's a very strong religious link to water. There's religious, probably spiritual link to water. And there were things that we weren't even aware of. So we had to spend a lot of time engaging with the traditional owners and, to Ingrid's point, not doing it from our perspective as a miner, but trying to understand the significance of that water to the local folk. And this you can apply to Mongolia, to Saudi, to Western Australia. We ended up coming up with certain solutions that have only now been implemented probably 10 plus years later, where we were looking at how do we use this water that we were tapping into for the benefit of the locals in the region. We started using it for the growth of hay, to feed cattle, to actually add value to the local communities. We were thinking of even bottled water because the quality of water was that fantastic that we were able to get traditional owners involved in, the idea was to get engaged in terms of positive industrial benefit to the local folk. So it's how do we engage in such a way that we don't just think about it from our perspective, but think about it from the community perspective. If we don't have them on board, we are not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, no, exactly. Hashim, you've been very patient because you wanted to say something as soon as he brought up that first story. Over to you.
Yes, actually, adding on point, the chance that we can get benefit from. I have a case study here in Riyadh. Actually, we have sewage treatment water, which is, I think we have quite big figures in the cities. We have almost 1.2 million cubic meters as a treated water that produced from Al-Manfuha treatment plant. And we have another plant in the southern part of the city, is Ain al-Heat, which is producing 250,000 cubic meter per day. It's a quite big figure. Yes. And this water can be used to fill the gap in water needs in mining.
Okay.
And to do that, it's regarding to an environmental perspective view. We can preserve the water bodies. I mean the groundwater aquifers, that this water, if it hasn't been treated well enough, it might affect the groundwater.
Yeah.
Therefore, we found it is really chance that it must be get benefit to use in this sector.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is something where, in terms of, and Dusan, I'm going to come back to yourself again, because the technology, etc., that can be developed, can be used with regards to, say, water treatment. So again, we're all in telling story mode now, aren't we? So another project that I had the privilege of working on in South Africa was the Emalakhleni water treatment plant. So that again was built because there was a lot of acid mine drainage, etc., from the coal mines very close to Johannesburg. And what the water plant did was, through a whole series of different types of osmosis, etc., extract all of the useful bits and pieces out of that water, and then, of course, put the clean water into a pipe, and off it went to the town. Now, the water plant itself was fantastic, and you could build houses and all kinds of things from it. But interestingly, coming back to the social side, I remember it was World Water Day, and so the company thought, hey, we're going to put something out on Facebook, and we're going to get lots of praise because we built this plant. But the problem was that the pipe from the water treatment plant to the local community, which wasn't owned by the mining company, but nobody had checked it to make sure it was clean, was dirty. So the community couldn't understand why the mining company was giving them dirty water. So this is something here where, again, technology plus people is really important to make sure that the tech actually works. Anyway, Dusan, you've now got the microphone. Do you have any stories or anything to share with us on more the water treatment side of things?
I think more kind of globally than that, we started to talk about maybe two things that are relevant to our discussion. One is, where at what stage of the supply chain do you actually implement specific technology, specific purposes for extraction of value, or however you want to look at it. We're talking about circularity as well. But the second one is, I wanted to say, I've lost my train of thought for a second. The second one that is a bit more global is that, then that leads us to this kind of discussion about the kind of water, food, energy nexus. What you're looking at potentially extraction of specific things at specific sections. If you're looking at wastewater biosolids, they may be more suited to agricultural production, or fertilizer or something like that, organic materials. So if you're looking at alternative dry processing mechanisms and processes, dry beneficiation, or the introduction of biopolymers into the mix, for example, you have a different kettle of fish that you're considering. So I think that's what I would like to add there. I think it's important to consider the use case and where do you insert the technology into the system.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you hold onto the microphone just for 1 second, we're going to finish off this panel session by working our way along the row with everybody saying, okay, if you could change or improve one thing with regards to water and mining, one thing, only one thing, Dennis. He's thinking, only one? Can I not give you 3 or 5 or 50? Only one. What would be the one action that you would suggest that here within Saudi Arabia we took to try and improve or enhance our ability to manage that water?
Is it me first? Yeah, look, I think, the interesting thing here is that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been working with desalination for a long time. And there's a lot of expertise here in that, and that can be used to a massive advantage. One thing that I would like to change, if I could, is probably the longevity of these resources such as water and the abundance of it. But unfortunately, I can't do that. So,
not yet, maybe. Ingrid, how about yourself?
I'm just going to vary it slightly, and I'm going to address the question of challenges and solutions.
Yeah.
Because often when we think of a solution or we have a technology, we launch that one and we try and solve so many problems with that technology, and that's not necessarily always the right one for that problem. So, if you have a hammer, you're going to go around trying to turn everything into a nail. So, there's a lot of sort of kind of preamble work that you want to do to really understand the complexity of the problem before then you try and match it, with a solution or develop the solution appropriately for that.
Yeah.
So that applies to water, but it applies to other things too.
Yeah, fantastic. So just because you've developed a solution doesn't mean to say that it might be the right thing
one.
In that
yeah,
context.
Yeah, we had this discussion earlier. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Dennis?
Well, the one thing I would change has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with awareness.
Okay.
Awareness of the true value of water. I think we just take it for granted. And even if we live in water abundant areas or water short areas, a lot of us waste water. And I think, so really truly understanding the value of water will change everything that we do.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Hashim.
Yes, for me, actually, as I mentioned before, treated water must be get the most benefit can we get from, and the figure which I was just mentioned, it was just in Riyadh city. And if we could apply that on the other cities, we will save a lot of amount of groundwater.
Brilliant. So take the fantastic example from here in Riyadh and apply it elsewhere as well. So our wonderful chairman is waving at me at the moment. So I'm going to leave you with those wonderful words that were stolen from Auden. So thousands of people go through life without ever being loved. I hope that doesn't happen to all of us here, but nobody goes through life without encountering water. So thank you very much, everybody, to our wonderful panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.